Yep.
All right. Well, Jake, I'll let you start us off and
Well,
introduce
cool.
what we're trying to do here.
Make sure. Okay. Everything good?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Well, welcome, guys, to our first podcast of me. My name is Jacob Qualls. I have with me today Sam Bickle. We are partners in this industry. We're both personal trainers, and we both share a similar trait that we have a disease known as cystic fibrosis. Along with cystic fibrosis, I also have something known as cystic fibrosis-related diabetes. And a lot of what we're going to touch on today is, our mindset, how we got to where we are, and also a little bit more about the disease as well. So, Sam, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm really excited to get this started. I think we both have a great message to get out there. One of the most common things I've noticed as a fit person with a disease is the iceberg effect, right? People see guys like us and, Sophie Grace Holmes and Ben Mudge, and they see, oh, they have mild cases, or they don't understand my struggle. They have it easy, or they took steroids, whatever. We hear all that, and nobody realizes that we've struggled too, right? For years and years and years, we've had setbacks, we've had hardships, and so that's why we're doing this, is to open an awareness that if you fight long and hard enough, you'd be surprised what's possible. So today what we're going to do is really more touch on, we're going to start with our personal stories and tell you guys the lows that we've been through, so you don't just imagine, the current physique and health level. I myself am at about 100% lung function right now after many years of wrestling it up. Jake, what are you at right now?
I believe on a baseline of 84. That was my last lung function for my most recent admission. So
Yeah, and you just got out of your last tune-up at the hospital, correct?
yes, yeah. So I mean, I've been able to keep that baseline for going on about 5 years now. I've been really exercising consistently for about 6. Granted, fitness was always a part of my life, but for the past 6 years, this has been my passion. It's been my job. So I definitely believe a huge part of that, not only with the compliance of treatments and nebulizers and everything else, but with the compliance of exercise, having a good diet regimen, everything that we've followed up until this point, this is how we have created our story. So
yeah, I have a couple of curious questions for you. First of all, do you think that you're to the point in your fight that you've hit the highest lung function you can hit, and now you're just trying to keep it as high as you can and live as long as possible?
I never want to think that I've limited myself. And so in terms of a lung function, and I'll touch on this with my story, but 6 years ago, I went through the college freshman phase of denial. I joined a fraternity and did all of these things, and it really affected my lung function. I got down to close to percent, and was in the hospital for nearly a month back in 2013. And from there, I've been able to rise up to the 70s and now the 80s. I never want to limit what I think my lung function is going to be. I think there's always potential for recovery and going up to the hundreds as well. Stay at 84% for the next 5 years. That's great. I'm still I'm able to handle the illness. I'm still keeping as much lung function as I can. But I still think that there is more room for improvement with both exercise and diet and treatment compliance. And I think the more that I do and the harder I work, the better I'm going to feel.
I think that's an important subject to bring up while we're on that. Guys, as much as our lungs fill with scar tissue and get destroyed over time, now once you've turned to scar tissue, there's no going back, right? But we do have another adaptation we make, which is we grow new lung tissue. Essentially, our lungs get bigger. That's why our rib cages can tend to expand. I've noticed with my physique, I have some issues with that barrel chest, right? But that's a sign that if you exercise and work hard, I think you can facilitate that growth of new lung tissue.
Definitely, definitely. I agree with that as well. And just to touch on something, most of our followers, most of the people listening, they're probably not going to have a full understanding of what we go through on a daily basis. And so, we'll through a quick synopsis of exactly what cystic fibrosis is and what we go through daily.
Okay. Yeah, because again, I think I've been addressing our other people with CF primarily. Let's try to stay as organized as possible. Here's, before we get into this, guys, so a little quick explanation of cystic fibrosis. It's a terminal genetic illness. We're born with it. There is no cure. The average life expectancy is 37. It affects our lungs, liver, pancreas, and spleen. So most people think of it primarily as a lung disease, but the digestive issues we face can actually be tremendous, right? Malnutrition is a huge aspect we deal with. CF-related diabetes is a complication that I don't have yet, but I could develop. I think I have a 36% chance of developing that in my lifetime. But what kills us at the end of the day is suffocation. We slowly lose more and more of our lung tissue and lung function to the bacterial growth that we have in our lungs. And I think that's about as simple of an explanation as I can give it, because it's actually a very complex disease.
I definitely. And one thing to touch on as well, for the CFers and for people that don't quite understand it, when I was born, I was diagnosed at about 6 months old. The life expectancy then was 16. And so you're looking at someone that's not even completing high school. And, within, 25 years, the treatments, the medications that they've come up with, these new modulators that they're coming out with for people with my mutations, they are they're improving
you also Delta 508?
Yes, I'm
okay.
double Delta.
Or double Delta, yeah. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you are as well.
Yeah. So, real quick, guys, we wanted to start really with an introductory aspect. So, Jake, I think what we should do next is you should start from the beginning. I want to hear your story, man. I still haven't gotten all of it, so I'm gonna have you go first on this one.
Yeah, of course. All right, so guys, that it's important to know. Like I said, when I was born, the life expectancy of someone with our condition is 16. I was blessed with a good family and good parents that kind of looked past that life expectancy, and so they didn't really coddle me, they didn't baby me. They made me understand that I was still going to live life past that 16-year mark, and I was going to have to learn how to be an adult. And so at that point, I was always involved in exercise. I was always involved in things that were going to help me keep my lung function for as long as possible. But I still had issues. I still went through hospitalizations, admissions. I believe we were just talking about this earlier. When I was younger, I actually feel like I had more. I had more issues. I had more admissions than potentially I do now. I had a lung in first grade. I had different issues that exacerbated the illness over time. And really around my high school years did I find exercise to be such a huge component of the illness that it really helped me to not only avoid the hospital, but also avoid just that general feeling of having an illness, being sick. Now, as I was saying earlier, come my freshman year of college, I went through sort of a denial phase. I had hurt my arm. In 2013, I had several different surgeries, a rare condition called compartment syndrome, completely unrelated. And with that, I was on bed rest. I had to go through different surgeries and recoveries to regain the use of my arm. And it made it so that it was very difficult for me to exercise. It's a cute puppy there. But with that too, I kind of lost my way. I lost my way with fitness. I lost my go-getter attitude that I'd always had with my illness, and it kind of fell to the wayside. So within 6 months, actually no, within 4 months, from August to December, I had gone from a baseline of about 88% all the way down to 45. And so I had lost almost, over 40% of my lung function to my condition, to my denial and non-compliance. I was also diagnosed with cystic fibrosis related diabetes, something that you kind of touched on, to where my body's no longer producing proper insulin when I eat, and so it's harder for me to digest the foods. And so I ended up losing a ton of weight, going from 175 pounds all the way down to 135. The doctor, essentially at that point, I was in the hospital for a month. During that hospitalization, he let me know I had to make a change, or that was it. That's how the condition is. If you're not proactive with your illness, if you keep this depressing attitude, you're going to lose face and you're going to lose your fight.
So
and that's how it is with
doctor addressed your mindset?
He did. He addressed my mindset. He let me know that I had to make a change. To be honest, I don't remember if it was my doctor or my nurse coordinator, but they came in. They both came in letting me know, like, the way that I'm heading now, it's a negative path and it's not going to lead to anything. And so hearing that from a doctor, and seeing, that the look on my mom's face when I came in with such a skinny frame and a loss of lung function, it really kind of lit a fire under my ass, so to speak, right? So in January of 2014, I ended up joining a gym again. I spent hours on end researching, different ways to exercise, different diet plans. I wanted to stop eating like stop eating all the Twinkies and actually focusing on a legitimate diet where I was able to bulk and utilize my insulin in a way that was going to be healthy for me. And so within 6 months of following a legitimate plan, and granted, I didn't know everything. I was just now getting into this game of fitness. I didn't know everything, but what I was doing, I was essentially saving my life. And I went from having that 45% lung function back to a baseline of 75%, and then eventually to a baseline of 80, and then 82 and 84, and so on. Which I've been able to keep for the past 5 years. And with that too, my weight obviously skyrocketed as well. Within 6 months of my weight being at 135 pounds, I ended up gaining back all of my original weight to 175. And from there, I just continued bulking until I got to 212, the mission weight.
Wow.
And so, yeah, man, it's been a constant battle of, realizing where I'm at, making sure that wasn't my limitation, and then going forward and improving it. And that's how fitness works, and that's how I believe, life works as well. You always have to improve. You can never stop believing that you can do better. And so going from, I went from having my condition to building up my body in a way that I could actually teach people without my condition on how to exercise. I began selling gym memberships, working on fitness plans, and it's gotten me to this point now, obviously, to where I am, I'm a personal trainer.
Now, when exactly did you decide you were going to make that switch?
Make the switch into being a personal trainer. I wanted to make the switch in 2015. So I had been officially doing this for about 1.5 years. But to me personally, I didn't feel like I was ready. Whether it was an issue of confidence or whether it was an issue of knowing that I did not possess all of the knowledge necessary to go forward, I took a step back. I focused more on gym sales, and I spent hours a day, researching different fitness plans, exercise routines, dietary plans that were going to benefit not only with our illness. You have to eat 7,000 calories a day to gain weight at some point, but also people that are within the normal range without our condition that are having to eat a smaller amount of calories to bulk, or whether they're trying to lose weight or gain weight. I wanted to be able to help everyone and not just people with our condition, and so that's something that I focused on.
Yeah. Guys, real quick, while we're kind of touching on the subject of nutrition, as cystic fibrosis people, we're encouraged to eat anything and everything. And I'm just going to tell you from personal experience, we can't do that. To some degree, eating healthy really does make an impact, even on your lung function, believe it or not. So yes, do we need a high calorie diet? Absolutely. But should those high calories come from as clean of sources as possible? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying never eat pizza and mac and cheese. No, I do that at least once or twice a week. But 80% of my consumption, I really pay attention to what I'm putting in my body.
Exactly, and especially with someone who struggles with diabetes as well. I mean, we were encouraged at a a young age to eat whatever we could to gain weight. People didn't necessarily understand our condition back in the 90s and in the early 2000s, so they thought, you know, we are fit, our lungs are failing us, our pancreas is failing us. We need to do whatever we can to keep that weight up, whether that be to drink, 15 ensures a day and drinking our calories through 3,000 calories worth of crappy supplements, or whether that be to eat Twinkies or Pop Tarts, whatever we could get our hands on. And that's why we're seeing this epidemic of CFRD as well. We're seeing this epidemic
contributing for sure. Now, have you? How old were you when you developed your CF-related diabetes?
So that was actually the same time as that admission I was talking about. So it was 2013. I believe I was 19 years old. And I mean, my sugars, man, I don't remember specifically, but I do know, when I am in the hospital, my sugars tend to spike, dealing with, IV antibiotics and the different fluids that they give you. They could get anywhere from 200 to 500. And you just, for people with that condition, you just feel like shit. You don't want to get up out of bed. You don't want to work out. You're constantly nauseous, dealing with that high blood sugar. And then on top of it, you've got to deal with cystic fibrosis. Your lungs aren't working well. You're coughing up a ton of mucus. And it's just a constant battle. But one thing that we're going to touch on today specifically is, the mindset that we have gotten used to get to this point. And, dealing with those high blood sugars, the best thing you can do is exercise. Yes, you're going to need insulin. You're going to need a correction, but you also need to get out of bed. You need to do whatever you can do to lower that blood sugar, whether it be through water consumption, through weight training, through, walking up and down the stairs, whatever you can do to, help sustain a lower blood sugar, a better quality of life, you need to do.
Yeah, so to those of you watching that don't have cystic fibrosis, imagine that. Diabetes by itself is a major thing to deal with. The insulin shots, you have to stay constantly monitoring your blood sugar, constantly watching what you eat. That alone is a tremendous obstacle. But then when we also add in battling infection in our lungs, malnutrition from other aspects of CF-related digestive issues, it's a tremendous obstacle. So again, people usually fail to recognize that when they see these healthy exteriors. Our disease is hidden. Now, how often were you admitted when you were a child? Like, did you spend a lot of time in the hospital?
So earlier I said that, I had a lot of admissions as a kid. And while that's true, getting more into my teenage years, I was able to avoid it a little bit more. When I was born, I'll take it way back. When I was born, I was diagnosed at 6 months old, but I had a lot of other complications as well. I had what they believe was pneumonia at the time. I stopped breathing. I had issues with getting oxygen to my brain, so I did have a little bit of brain hemorrhaging as well. And I was being airlifted to the hospital, and they actually had to put me on a machine known as ECMO. And so I was constantly sick. I was constantly dealing with CF and whatever was affecting my body at the time. And that really didn't stop for the first, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years of my life. I spent a lot of time, in hospital rooms dealing with whatever was going on. And learning how to manage my CF. Well, my mom was at the time. My mom was learning how to manage it. Getting into grade school, I mean, I probably if I calculated how much time I missed from elementary school, so from first grade, say all the way through my senior year of high school, I probably missed close to 1 to 2 years of actual schooling. Just being in the hospital for 1 to 2 weeks at a time, dealing with IV antibiotics, and then also going home with them as well and IV infusions. Um, it was a constant battle, which everyone listening with CF, they can understand, they can relate to. But I definitely noticed more of an issue when I was younger as opposed to now. At the moment now, I'm probably visiting the hospital once or twice a year. I still sometimes have different complications. So last year in 2018, I got the flu twice. And so back in February of 2018, I just spent 2 weeks in the hospital with the flu. I was admitted again in July, and then I believe it was in December of last year that I was admitted as well. And then this year, I've only been admitted twice, knock on wood. I'm completely healthy. My weight hasn't fluctuated. And although I had those complications from last year with the flu and several colds and exacerbations, my lung function still hasn't changed. I'm still looking at 84% lung function, and I'm still, able to exercise daily. I'm still able to do my usual routine, and I'm still able to work, a full-time, sometimes even 60-hour-a-week job to get to where I want to be. And just to touch on something as well, you and I think it's fair to say are both blessed with our condition. And so, we both deal with exacerbations. We both deal with CF, and I personally deal with CFRD. But we have been very lucky and blessed to be able to do what we do every day, to be able to work out daily and handle, our disease. There are people that haven't quite caught on to the exercise concept yet that are, 3-4 years younger than we are with 18% lung function. Being admitted recently.
We have to address this too. Guys, we have a message of fight, do the best you can, but we understand that some of you have awful advanced cases of CF from the time you're 5 or even younger, right? There are some people that get hit so hard by it that they do still die before they're 20. So we're not trying to belittle or demean you guys. We know that there are varying degrees, but at the end of the day, doing something will be guaranteed to extend your life no matter what your situation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Doing what you can with what you have, that's been the name of the game with everything. And so it's something I like to tell with some of my CF clients. I have done a lot of pro bono training in the past with people with cystic fibrosis. And one of the things that I always tell them is, I can't guarantee you a cure. Exercise is not a cure to the illness. That's obvious. We still are going to deal with this on a daily basis. There's still going to be days where I wake up and it's hard for me to get out of bed because I'm coughing or I'm dealing with some kind of issue. And you're still going to experience that as well. And I hate that. I hate that for all of us. But with that being said, making a lifestyle change, making a difference in your routine, in your regimen, it's going to improve your quality of life. And while it might not raise your lung function, it might not improve your lung function from 45% to 80%. That is an insane case. I've been, very lucky to receive that. But what I can tell you is it's going to prolong that lung function for as long as possible. You might be at 45% now, but you could be at 45% 5 years from now as well. So making those changes to your diet and to your exercise routine, it's vital. It's vital to your illness. It's vital to your happiness, your well-being, and to everything else that's involved. Before we get too much further into it, I really want to hear your story as well. We've really talked about, what I've dealt with and my CF, but we both have a story here. We both had issues with our illness, and I think it would be good to hear a little bit more about what you've had to deal with throughout the course of your life.
I actually have the like you said, you're so blessed. I was looking back. I think it's been over 3 years since my last tune-up,
That's
and that
amazing.
blows my mind because there was one year I spent probably a third of that year in the hospital, and I spent over half of that year on IV antibiotics. Guys, I've had a port before. I know the hell of constant home infusions, nosebleeds, weight loss. My gut was an adult diagnosis. I wish I had been born a few years later when they started screening children from the beginning. As soon as they're born, because I didn't get tested for it. I've always had the digestive issues, the pancreatic insufficiency. I know this because and it sucks to say this, but guys, when your pancreas doesn't work right and it's untreated, your bowel movements are nothing short of disgusting. The smell and power of them is noteworthy. And my parents were new parents; they didn't know that baby diapers weren't supposed to stink that bad, or that the fecal matter was supposed to look different. They had no idea, and so I was pretty much malnourished my entire life, or at least my entire adolescence, right? I never got the medication as I was growing up. They could have helped me grow the way I was supposed to grow. Um, when I started my journey into fitness, I was only 112 pounds and I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
Not that young. I was extremely malnourished. Today, I woke up at 156. The heaviest I've ever been was 177. So I didn't know I had it. I knew I had some differences, but what was interesting was that the pulmonary issues for me really set in at about the age of 9. So, I start getting these thick buildups of nasty green infected mucus, right? And every time I go to the doctor for these things, we get these misdiagnoses. I've heard everything from, oh, you have irritable bowel syndrome. It looks like you have chronic bronchitis. It looks like you're pre-asthmatic. You have allergies that are draining into your lungs and they're filling with fluid, right? All these symptoms of a source cause. And it was interesting growing up like that. I did get bullied. I was underweight. I was sick, pale. I wasn't developing like all the other kids around me. Puberty didn't really do much for me, you know, and I just never realized at that age, and I was too young to, right? Like a lot of medical professionals were responsible for me not getting care before I did. And when you're sick and you cough and there's this rattle in your lungs, human nature, we instinctually avoid people that cough, right? We go, ew, get away from me, right? Don't get me sick. That was my everyday experience in high school. People would hear my nasty cough. And so I went through a lot because of not knowing what I had, right? And the other thing is, all that infection, all that bacteria was running uncontrolled. So even though I have a adult diagnosis in a milder case, by the time I got diagnosed, I was in bad shape. Um, that bacteria ran around unchecked and it filled my lungs with scar tissue. I've seen my CT scan. My doctor was showing me the healthy lung tissue versus the scar tissue. And guys, it's a mess. He even couldn't believe the severity of it, especially considering how well I was breathing at that particular time. What happened was at 14, I was tired of being skinny. I was tired of getting made fun of, and I started lifting weights. My stepdad, thank goodness, was actually an amateur bodybuilder, Todd Johnson. He impacted my life in so many ways. I probably wouldn't be here doing this cast as a healthy person in front of you if it weren't for him. He taught me how to lift weights, and through exercise by itself, guys, I managed to decrease my symptoms significantly. I was expelling these fluids through the airway clearance of exercise. I was getting stronger, making my lungs stronger, and I didn't get diagnosed till the age of 21. And my doctor and I know that that is because I started really getting into fitness. Now, in a way, that hurt me too, right? So I got better for a while. Up until the age of 18, I think I gained over 30 pounds of muscle, again, without medication to help my malnourishment. I'm pretty proud of that accomplishment. I got up to about 155 pounds before I got diagnosed. But then I hit a tipping point where all my exercise just still wasn't enough. Uh,
Right.
and I started tanking. I started tanking bad. In a 1 year span, stress and quitting school to support my dad who was unemployed and trying to get disability all set in at the same time, I started working at a place called Parfab where I was exposed to fiberglass every day. Probably the worst possible job other than firefighting and smoke inhalation that I could have picked as a person with CF. Again, I didn't know, right? And I watched all my muscle disappear that had taken me 4 years to gain. The body I was proud of was taken away from me. I was suffocating, guys. I was breathing through a straw. I'd be laying down and I still couldn't catch my breath. And I would try to work out. I kept trying to work out at this time and I couldn't. And I should have realized before I let all of it get to this point, like, hey, I need to go talk to somebody. But by then, my doctors had convinced me that it was all these other things, right? So I was just like, oh, great. Um, when I finally realized it's time to get help was one day I coughed up not a little bit of streak of blood in my mucus, but I poured blood out of my lungs. It was a puddle on the ground about that big, and that was terrifying. I cannot tell you how scary it is to bleed like that from where you breathe, right? And finally, I was like, okay, it's time to go get some help. And I went to I didn't have insurance at the time. Again, I was supporting my dad and myself. We were living together as a 21-year-old. And I begged a doctor for help. I was like, look, I don't have insurance, but something is terribly, terribly wrong. This was Dr. Barnes. I'll never forget what he did for me. He had a friend in radiology in a hospital nearby, and they literally snuck me in a back door to do a free CT scan and diagnosis. And the radiologist determined it looked like cystic fibrosis. Ironically, I was so convinced of all the misdiagnoses I'd had. I was like, no, I don't have that. I've just got this, and this, and it got really bad. I was resistant. I've always tried to work on humility and arrogance and not being a know-it-all. When I got to the hospital, I'll never forget. I had to drive myself there. I didn't have any help. I drove myself to the hospital where they had set a room for me. Again, I didn't have insurance, but my life was now in danger. I was dying. Um, and I get to the hospital. I get out of my car, out of this parking garage, and I see this 100-yard ramp. Not super steep, but to me at the time, it might as well have been a mountain, right? And I'm so weak and starving for oxygen that I can't even begin to describe. I took 10 steps, I leaned against the rail. I took another 10 steps, I leaned against the rail. I could not breathe. I could not breathe. And they finally got me into my room. I made it to the admission lobby, and then they wheelchaired me into my room. And guys, I didn't even know how bad everything was until I got hooked up to oxygen. When that mask hit me, and I got to take in a breath of pure oxygen, it was like I had been suffocating and underwater, and the ceiling of that water was 40 feet above me, but I finally broke the surface, and I cried. I cried like a baby in relief. I couldn't believe it. Guys, at that time, My lung function was probably less than 40%, easy to say, if not lower than 30. We didn't test it at that time because if I tried to do a PFT at that time, I would have caused a massive amount of bleeding. Um, so we did this shotgun blast of antibiotics while we confirmed diagnosis. Once I did some research, I knew the test was going to come back positive. And sure enough, it did. And so now at the age of 21, I'm back to 115 pounds. The little kid I started out as is looking at me in the mirror again. Now he's sick, pale, eyes sunken. And after I did this course of antibiotics, my lung function baseline was right about 55% when we tested it. And it stayed there for a while. I had to go back to the gym and start over. I'm getting told all these new things, right? Hey kid, your life expectancy is shorter than you ever realized. You're gonna have to take pills and medications every day for the rest of your life. You're gonna constantly fight lung infection. You're gonna have frequent, I'm learning all this stuff for the first time, the stuff you guys know, right? And it was hard. Um, it was really tough. And then uh, in a 5-year span of that diagnosis, I lost a mother to suicide. My dad started developing early dementia, and I lost an uncle to brain cancer.
Wow.
And I think going through that would really break most people. And there were times it broke me, don't get me wrong. Um, but through that entire experience, I found joy. I found a new appreciation for life. When I lost people I loved, my mom, it made me realize how precious every single person in your life that's still there is. When I found out my life was short, I realized every day we're alive is a gift that we're not guaranteed. I I am actually grateful that I have cystic fibrosis. It changed me in the best of ways. I have more ambition and drive. I'm running a successful personal training business now. I'm my own boss. My life is amazing. And it's because I chose, instead of letting all those things break me, I chose to get stronger. We talk a lot about post traumatic stress disorder and things like that, where we go through trauma and it damages us. But what we don't hear as much about is a term called post traumatic growth. And it's not going to happen on your own. You have to decide to see it this way. You have to work on your mindset. And so I go back to the gym. My disease took 4 or 5 years of hard work away from me, and I started over. There were times I cried after a workout. But overall, what I did is I turned all the negative. I brought my rage, my how could God do this to me? I brought that to the gym and I unleashed it. And what took me 5 years to build, I got back in 9 months. And for those of you who have ever tried to put on muscle, gaining 30 pounds in 9 months is crazy. Uh, so that was a healthy outlet for me too, though. The negative, the rage, the hurt, right? I poured it into my weights, and I'd walk away a little bit lighter every time. So post-diagnosis at 21, baseline function of 58%, 7-month stint on intravenous antibiotics. Now that was hell. I think I'm taking too long, so I'm not going to go into that. But guys, I've hit setbacks. It was a slow crawl, but over a 3-year span after diagnosis, my lung function went to 55%, all the way up to 95. And I believe it's 60-40, 60% adherence to medication and treatment and medicine, and 40% fitness. Sometimes I could even say 50-50 is fair. But to those of you that are sicker, I think we should say 60-40. Um, you know, and this is the message, I could have given up. I wanted to give up so many times, but I had friends and family that supported me. I spent the time grieving and saying why me that I needed to, but every day I'd pick myself right back up and keep going. And that is why I'm here. That is why I'm the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life. Like I tell people all the time, I shouldn't look like this, and I'm proud that I do. Um, so again, to those of you that want to be like, oh, those dudes just take steroids. No, guys, we've put in work. We put in massive amounts of work, and this is what we have to show for it. And I think this is why me and Jacob both became personal trainers. It helped my life in every aspect to get in shape. This is life extension. This is beating the 37 life expectancy. Uh, and it being that crucial to me and making the change it has in my life, that was something that at 21 years old, after my diagnosis, I decided no matter what, I was going to become a personal trainer and help others.
And there's so much to take away from your story. But things that I heard that I wanted to touch on you from a perspective of someone with cystic fibrosis, and from a perspective of anyone, people with or without it. First of all, it's with you being diagnosed at 21 years old. A lot of us don't quite understand the struggle that you have to go through because of that. With me being diagnosed at 6 months, I knew I had this condition. I knew the life expectancy. Before I could walk, I knew what I had. I knew I had to take treatments and medicines and all of this other stuff. It was never foreign to me. And so to be 21 years old and to have gone through life dealing with the malnourishment and the bullying, to finally see a diagnosis, see a reason for everything that you dealt with, and then realize what you have to go through to keep yourself healthy, I can't imagine that. I legitimately can't. I can't imagine being 21 years old and being told, you have to take an enzyme for the rest of your life, 5 to 6 pills a meal.
And then learning those habits, right? I had to start from scratch.
Exactly.
Pill planners, adherence, medications, antibiotics, and all the effects they have on your body. And it was kind of cool too, though. Like there was a relief to it. Like finally, I know what's wrong with me. So it wasn't all bad. It was the answer that I just never got to have. And there was some relief in that. But yeah, it was a lot to deal with. But this is the funny thing, guys. I tell people all the time, if you help a bird hatch out of its egg, you usually cripple it for life, right? Struggle gives us the opportunity to find out who we are and how strong we can be. And we don't grow when our lives are easy. We grow when our lives are hard. And we have to welcome struggle. We have to welcome failure, because we will fail. We're human beings, but we can learn lessons from every failure that bring us closer to success. And these are the mindsets that I pass on to my clients as well. It's kind of funny too, when you have a disease like this, and you're a trainer, it's very easy to constantly remind people, what's your excuse again? Not to say that there aren't people out there that deal with more than I do. I'm well aware that my disease is nothing compared to cancer. Like I said, I watched my uncle die 9 months after I got diagnosed. And I think that in a way helped my perspective. I miss him so much. I miss all these loved ones I've lost. But even in those deaths, there were lessons that I learned.
Right. Well, and to go to my second takeaway, something that a lot of people, I think, might not realize or neglect to realize is we're human beings. We still have everyday struggles. You lost your mother to suicide. You lost your uncle to brain cancer, and you were dealing with the diagnosis of cystic fibrosis. Like, just because we deal with our diagnosis doesn't mean we don't have to deal with everyday life, and see these struggles that other people have to face as well. And so that should be a key takeaway. We deal with CF in our own way or in similar ways, but with that too, we have so many other things that we have to deal with on a daily basis, whether it be, the job, or whether it be trying to find a new apartment, or losing a relationship, or losing a loved one. We still have to do those things. We still have to rise above that on top of everything else we have to handle with our illness. And so for people watching that don't have cystic fibrosis, yes, understand that we do have this illness. Understand that we have to fight to survive for it, but we also have to survive in every other element of life as well. And that's not something a lot of people realize. We were talking a little bit on your mindset and what got you to where you are post-diagnosis. And I loved a lot of what you said. Being a part of cystic fibrosis groups, I'm sure you've seen this as well. There's a lot of depressive notions. There's a lot of sadness in these groups of people that are dealing with low lung function, or they're dealing with a quality of life that's just unacceptable to themselves. And they're either angry, they're either upset, or whatever it may be. And they're taking it out in what I would consider laying on the couch and just waiting for either a lung transplant or even death, sadly to say. But what you were able to do through this diagnosis and through the loss of your loved ones and through all of the struggles that you went through, you were able to rise above that and deal with that post-traumatic growth that you were speaking of. You're able to utilize the sadness and the pain and the anger that you had from those years of bullying and those years of struggles and put that into something productive. And that's the name of the game right there. Putting your illness, putting your issues and your circumstance aside, and realizing that you're going to improve your life no matter what life deals at you, right? And so people without CF, no matter what happens to you, whether it's the loss of a loved one or everything that we just mentioned earlier, you have to be able to put that aside, or you have to be able to use it and grow from it. And that's the only way you're going to survive.
You have a choice. Try or don't. And if you don't try, you're guaranteed to get worse. But if you try, you have a chance to beat things. You have a chance to get better. You have a chance to get stronger. You have a chance for a better quality of life. It's kind of funny because as you struggle for this better quality of life, I know some of you that deal with depression would say, well, I don't want to live longer. I'm okay with dying. But as you learn all these lessons and fight and struggle, life starts to get better, and life starts to become something that you cherish. The time you have on this earth becomes something you cherish. And because I had thoughts of suicide at times. Again, I want to express to people, I've been at the lowest of lows before, but I just didn't stay there. I couldn't stay there. Self-pity is one of the most toxic and harmful places a person can be. Because when you feel sorry for yourself, you want everybody else to feel sorry for you. And in that mindset, you can't take charge. You can't make decisions to be responsible for your outcome. So I think, are we getting close to our hour mark?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes left. It looks like, but we've definitely got some good content here, man. The last thing I want to say, based on what you were just talking about, we're talking about people with CF and people with these depressive notions or this depression and anxiety that comes with having something like what we do. And to me, one of my philosophies has always been, if I am obsessing over my illness, or if I'm obsessing over the things that are happening to me, I'm not actually living. If I spent my whole life obsessing over the fact that I was diagnosed with an incurable illness, I would not be where I was today. I probably wouldn't be alive. And that depression can just eat you from the inside out, just like the illness. And so if you make these lifestyle changes, if you change to a more positive routine, a more positive life, I can guarantee you your lung function might be low. You might have high blood sugars. You might deal with other things in your life. You're going to be able to brush through those, and you're going to be able to wind up on top, just like you have, just like I have. It's so imperative to have that healthy mindset in everything that you do. And whether that be a job or work or doing that routine, that positive change, that's what's going to change your life.
Yeah. And that's another thing I like to touch on. There's an interesting study of patients that were going through a cold, right? And in this study, I don't know the name of it or the date or anything, but I have read it before. They gave about half of the participants a placebo pill and told them, hey, this will make your cold better. And by about a 12 to 16 hour difference, these people healed and got over their cold more quickly because in their head, they thought they were taking medication that was helping them. And so science has proven how powerful our mind is over our body with just that one study. There's plenty of other examples, guys. So if you don't think that having a positive mindset can't help boost your immunity and your health as a whole, then you're denying direct scientific evidence at this point. So part of our success, Jake, is our mindsets, is our positivity, because our body responds to that too. And I think that's a good note for us to finish up on. Guys, this is our message. Do the best you can with what you've got, and you might be amazed what can happen. And don't do the whole thing that everybody does when they start at the gym. Like they try really hard for 6 weeks and don't make it. No, we're talking 6 months, 1 year, 6 years. Guys, it took me 5 years to make a really tremendous difference in my lung function and health total. But I never stopped. And so that's what we want to help you guys do. So as we do these podcasts, we're going to share our workout routines. We're going to share our diet and nutrition. We're going to bring guest speakers. We're going to have people that are extremely knowledgeable about cystic fibrosis. And we're going to share with you our mindsets and our beliefs and our philosophies that have helped us rise above and conquer this terrible disease. And through that, we hope to build a better community and inspire some people and help other people do the same thing that we have done. Jake, thank you very much for your time. I've enjoyed our podcast today. I really look forward to doing these in the future.
I do as well, man. I think on a final note, with everyone that we're talking to, if you're tuning in, just like Sam said, start slow, work your way up, but make sure you stay with this routine. Next week, we are going to be having Sophie Grace Holmes. She's another cystic fibrosis patient that deals with her illness through exercise and through motivating others with her positive mindset. She'll be coming on next week, and then we're going to be, as you said, scheduling more guests out into the future to come up with several different topics that are going to help people with and without CF overcome the struggles of life. So if you have any topics or any questions for either Sam or myself, be sure to message us. We're going to post this on several different social media platforms. If you happen to see it, give us a like, shoot us a message, and we would love to help you out with whatever we can. This is why we're here.
Yeah, guys, we have an important message, and anything you can do as viewers, if you believe in what we're trying to do, helping us get noticed would really mean a lot to us, because we want to help you. We both are personal trainers. We're not trying to guard our information or our fitness secrets. We want to share them with you guys. And so we're going to do as best as we can to tell you what works and what doesn't work and things like that, because we've been there and done that, but we're educated too. When you become a fitness professional, it becomes your responsibility to know what you're talking about. You can't misinform clients. It's not acceptable. And so through all those experiences, we think we can really help everybody out.
Definitely. Well, Sam, always a pleasure, man. You guys tune in to us next week, and we'll cover some more topics with you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
You too.